What up, everybody? Scuffy here. And tonight it is more fisting. It's time for more fisting. Are you ready? Are you ready? Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you Alexis Polux. This is the one of the three current Imperial Fist warlords. This is the current iteration of the deck that I've been working on for him. I wanted to do something a little different. I'll show you how it is different. And then kind of break down the gameplay and the success a little bit. Pollux is a tricky beast. Let's get into him. So first off, he has some factors going against him as he is currently. As you can see, playing 30 games, I feel that's pretty good. That's not counting event games, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't played Pollux much in the event, but I've heard that he's got some really good draft options. But he's got 30 health, he's got low initiative ability, but his ability is this 2 energy put in play Karadan squad. And we have seen with warlords specifically that can put troops into play, especially troops that have got some degree of sticking here. We've seen that in other factions, right? We've seen that with the defenders of Caliban, and Zahariel has got the ability to put in those precognition troops. Vulcan can put in Survivor 2-1 Sorkar hunters, so those are going to be a little bit stickier. There are ways to keep your guys alive when they're sticky, and then you have a better way to respond to threats on the board. So that's kind of the approach that I started with. Still missing one particular card in the entire Imperial Fist faction right now, which is Archimus. I don't have Archimus. So I've been able to build together a deck for Pollux using a lot of cards at my disposal currently. Things may change as I get Archimus or as I make changes to the deck, but let's take a look at a game, and then I'll break down the deck for you and kind of explain the approach to it and how it works. Okay, so this game here is going to be against Defenders of Caliban, against Mir Aztalan. Out the gate, you're seeing here some pretty similar cards. Maybe at this point, if you played the event enough over this last week, you're kind of getting tired of seeing Kestros and Praetorian Recruit. You'll see them more often. Gorhagen as well. But the idea with this deck is really to put bodies on the board. This is not a turret deck. I'm going to save that for a different build. I really I've done enough turrets in the event. I like to do turrets outside, or something outside. Something outside of the event that's not turret related. So what I'm doing here is using, and the great thing about Pollux, the only really great thing about Pollux, I have to say, with him being low initiative, is he's mostly gonna get that counterattack. That's really big. Having that counterattack option is super nice, because it allows you to get 2 extra health on a unit, whether that is on a Gorhagen, a Kestros, the little rally troops, Jubak, Kai, whatever it is. You've got some options to actually get some health on the board. And this is kind of one of those instances. Now, granted, these guys have got 1 attack, but having Gorhagen on here to take out one of them and then stick around to still do 2 damage if I need him to on something else, that's really the upsell for being able to produce that troop. That's the biggest thing. And Stalwart Defenders is a key card. You're going to give up some momentum initially when you play it, especially already being at low initiative, but the value that it generates over the course of a game, much like Servo Arm for the Iron Hands, is immense. It's worth that turn. But we're not looking great here. The board is building for Aztalan, right? He's got a lot of he's got a lot of bodies on the board, so not fantastic. It's not a great place to be in. We're going to hope for a couple of our wide draw damage cards that we've got in the deck. Not seeing any of those come up just yet. So in the meantime, doubling down. We've still got 30 health, but we're at a problem here at this point. He can put 4 health on this guy. He can just whittle it down. So the idea with it is, though, is first off, it's an Astartes deck. I talked about it not being a turret deck. It's an Astartes deck, Astartes Polux, which is very possible. There are a lot of Astartes in the Imperial Fists. There's a lot of them, and they've all got, I can't say all, most of them have got Bastion to some degree. Low attack, low health on the offense, high health on the defense. What does that mean necessarily? It means that you're able to have little bodies, and here we've got our defense satellites. I'm going to bait him out one more time. I want him to fill up his board. Really invest into it. We're going to add on some extra health here. So these guys now have got, 7 and 6 health respectively on the offense, which is nice. I'm not sure if that was a misclick on his part. Don't know what that was all about. If he meant to fire elsewhere, or if he was looking to keep his like a spot on the board available for something. So he goes and he clears my whole board, despite having the 2 stalwart defenders, unfortunately. But I've got the defensive satellites. I'm going to have to go into it, and I'm going to be able to generate a troop and then give it an additional 2 health. Almost cleared everything. That's pretty good rolls. I won't deny that's pretty good rolls. So as long as these guys stick, you've got 2 attack that you can throw out to deal with a threat or to take care of your opponent at the end of the game. But really, that's not the win con here. There are 2 win cons in this deck. Win con number 1 is filling up the board with a bunch of Astartes that have stuck through the course of the game, whether they're simply low 2/2s or 1/2s or whatever they are, and then throwing down just to see Gunfried. Especially when your opponent has got no troops to spread the damage around, and you can drop just to see, and every single one of those 3 fires goes into your opponent's warlord. It gets pretty nasty. So that's really cool. We might see that this game here. Not too bad. I'm going to buff up what I've got. I know that I'm likely to run the risk that he's got irresistible charisma. Looks like he doesn't have it this turn, which is good. But he is going to throw a lot of stuff into my Gorhagen, and that's okay. If that wipes out everything that he's got to get rid of that 1 troop, I'm okay with that. So there's that one win con. Is having Justice just go off with a board of 5 other troops and dealing, an insane amount of damage, all to the opponent's warlord or across the board and eliminating threats. The other element to this deck that is a win con is Stone Gauntlet. Stone Gauntlet is the 4 energy tactic. We'll take a look at that. I don't know if that goes off in this game, but we'll take a look at that very soon, and you'll see how effective that can be. Stone Gauntlet, if you get stalwart defenders out, or even if you just have a bunch of troops with 2 and 3 bastion on them, every single one of those fires off. And late game here, as you can tell, we've got 2, 6, 3, 4, 4. That's a lot of damage that suddenly could blow up onto the opponent. That whether that is going to hit random troops or that's going to hit their warlord, it can catch them unexpectedly because maybe they were letting that little 2/2 sit, thinking, okay, well, it's not going to do much. Why should they invest a whole bunch of tactics and attacks into a 2/2 with 6 bastion when they could be throwing that into your opponent's face, right? Whether there's no reason not to. The answer to that is pretty simple. The answer to that is pretty simple. Because otherwise they're going to take a lot of shots to the face. A lot of hurtful pain is going to come their way. Whether that is in the form of the Stone Gauntlet, which is enough to be lethal, or the Stone Gauntlet fires off, and then you have all those little 2/2s to then finish the job. That's really how it works. I think I've got a game here to show you in just a sec, but let's take a look at the deck. So the deck here is very low curve. A lot of 2s, a lot of 3s, a lot of 4s. That is to help me get bodies on the board, play stalwart defenders, and keep the board filled. The only troops in here that really generate additional troops are Kestros, right? Kestros generates, and then theoretically, you might get some troops from something like Chubak or something like that, but really that's not it. I've gone kind of heavy on tactics, but all the tactics are really tactical tactics. The only offensive tactics that are in here are defensive satellite and stone gauntlet. Everything else, drilling site is supportive. Herrenberg is supportive. Angelic presence. Angelic presence is a choice on my end, not to use it to heal 3 to my warlord, but if I have all those 2/2s, I can make them all 2/3s, and then suddenly they have one additional action available to them, whether that's against a 1 health troop or against a 2 attack warlord. Then I can get a little extra punch out of them. So I'm trying that out. That may not stick forever, but it's an option. It's an option. And then supply lines, 1 supply lines. Why? Because I only have 2 vehicles, and getting Just to See on 6 or Whirlwind on 4 is fantastic. Informant network, just to deal with the stealth option. There's enough random damage there, but just to deal with that stealth option early in the game. And then Stalwart Defenders is all supportive. So Retribution is a hard removal because that's just such a great card, especially if you have a board full of 4 or 5 troops. This is a low cost removal, which is really nice. So that's how this deck works. That's the idea. I've got Phalanx in there as a supportive tactic as well, because late game that can give, number 1, that gives Pollux 4 Bastion. And then if you pull up into 4 energy and you drop a stone gauntlet, then you can fire that off, and depending on what other troops you've got on the board, you can actually do quite a lot of damage. Now, unfortunately, I didn't pin some of the games that was on here. I was going to do one that was thematic, and I kind of forgot to pin it and rolled over it. But Pollux was involved in the Battle of Fall, and he led that fleet in place of Sigismund against the Iron Warriors. And the Iron Warriors were led by Perturabo, who had planned his attack according to anticipating Sigismund, and almost lost that engagement as a result of Pollux being there in place of Sigismund. And if it were not for Pollux following his orders to a T to withdraw, despite taking massive losses, the Imperial Fist actually could have won that battle. So that was just a little thing I wanted to show. I had a game there where Pollux just totally hammered and got the Stone Gauntlet on an unsuspecting Perturabo. But sadly, I did not get that game safe. So let's take a look at a couple more games. You might get a better idea. Okay, so this game here, we're going to go against a Horus with 40 health, which is always ambitious, but this is a fairly solid hand, except for Angelic Presence. Angelic Presence is something I want to draw into, not something I want to have in my opening hand. Got a Stone Gauntlet, so that's good. So as long as I can get some troops on the board with Bastion, I can make use of that. If you've played enough events, you've probably seen this initial couple of turns, right? It's not going to play much different. It's going to play very similar to how those games go. But the end game in a structured environment where you're actually building the deck and making decisions as far as what goes into your deck as opposed to random drafting, that's really where it comes down to it. I'm going to throw down Ahmed, and then I'm just going to keep that counterattack, because if he doesn't get rid of Ahmed, I can add some extra Bastion onto my troops. That are going to be generated by Kestros, in addition to the counterattack. Figure we'll keep the Stalwart Defenders. As long as 2 units survive, Stalwart Defenders will gain some Bastion on there. And that's worth it for me not to take the Face Strike here, because I know that it's Horus. So his lethal window, he's got Vengeful Spirit, he could drop Chariot of the Gods, Quick Fire. So I want to keep my health around as much as I possibly can. And then seeing these Chaos troops, I'm figuring, okay, so he's going thematic. He's going with the, the Marks of Chaos, and looking to go for Whispers Horse, which you don't see too often. You don't see Whispers of Horus decks too often. They're fun to see, and especially with the recent changes to Marks of Chaos, it's actually not a bad way to go. The problem is The pacing of the game can quickly, with a lot of like the desperate defense, the ramp decks, he can quickly get left behind. So by the time he gets his whispers off, he's not in a great state. But right now, he's kicking my butt. I mean, he's up 19 health on me, so that's not great. That makes me feel like a little scared. So at this point, I'm looking to find any ways to get frontline on the board. The one thing with stalwart defenders, and as much as people really hate to see it steamroll and start adding Bastion 2 to all your troops, it does nothing for your warlord. Unlike servo arm of the Imperial, the Iron Hands. Servo arm of the Iron Hands is always going to heal 2 to a unit, and if all your units are full, it goes to your warlord. That's great. But stalwart defenders, if you don't have any units on the board, it does nothing for you, which is why it's a resolution. If it was a relentless, it should be able to affect your warlord, but it doesn't. So really, at this point, I'm just buying myself time, keeping front lines out there, trying to keep those front lines as long as possible, because at this point, he can hit me 3 times, maybe even 2, and then follow up with a vengeful spirit, and it's game over. So I've really got to wait it out. And as much as I don't like seeing that front line go because of an outflank, it does mean that he doesn't have vengeful spirit in his hand this turn, so I'll take it. And we're about to see the stone gauntlet fire out and even those odds a little bit. So we're down 16 health right now. We're going to get rid of his troop, and we've got 6, 8, we've got 10, we've got 12 Bastion going off. So we're going to drop him by 12. And suddenly give him a reason to reconsider leaving those Bastion troops on the table. He's still up, but the threat has just escalated because now I've increased the Bastion by 2 on those troops, and the chances that I might draw a second stone gauntlet are, it's a real thing. So he's got to wonder. I could actually play supply lines and have a 50-50 chance of drawing into a Justicey at 6 energy. The problem is now he's got this spread. And now it would be 100% because I've only got those 2 vehicles. So because he's got the spread, Justicey might not be as potent as I want it to be. So I'll draw him up for my next turn. And we will even the field a little bit. And as long as he doesn't have a vengeful spirit, this is game. Because otherwise, he's got the 4 health right there. I don't have any more frontline. Not healing myself with the stalwart defenders. Does he have it? He does not. He goes for his whispers instead, trying to eke out an extra turn. If I had Stone Gauntlet, any one of these is just going to blow things away. Stuns my warlord. That's fine. Between the abilities I've got on the board, I'm going to play Phalanx just to draw up and actually throw down some Bastion on my warlord for some extra cushion. And we've got a troop there. We've got some troops to bolster things. We can play the drill site, which will still let us play Gunfried. And we are going to get maximum damage here. So in this one game, you saw both win cons used, one to even the field and the other one to help finish the game. And those troops that have stuck around with low health and high Bastion can go in and finish the job. So that's how it works. Okay, so we've got this game here against Core Swain. Everybody loves Core Swain, right? This is going to be interesting, to say the least. Core Swain has got a really huge lethal range. He's got the ability to snowball early with Decor, with the Dark Angels troops. The Dark Angels have got a lot of access to flanking. They've got 4 units that flank potentially, or two units that flank, and then a couple that deal some significant damage in the rally effect. So far he's going up with the turtle strategy. He's got the 3/3, which is enough to take out some of my things. Again, we're going to make use of this counterattack. We're going to throw on what we can. No stalwart defenders in hand to pump anything just yet. He's got that Decor down, likely banking on wounding the troops, and he knows he's got to get rid of that Kestros. He's probably fairly certain that if he doesn't get rid of Kestros, I'm going to play Stalwart Defenders on my next turn. And there we go. We've got another example there of having that troop out. Having that 2/2 troop out. Just to be able to throw at things. To eliminate a threat. Just because it's got 4 health doesn't mean that don't be afraid to use it. You can create it every turn to throw it out there. Don't be afraid to use those guys. And I am completely okay losing turrets. That's fine. As long as I get my Astartes right, as long as I get the Stalwart Defenders out on other troops and I get the Bastion higher up on bigger things. That's really what I'm more concerned about. So, we know we've got the Whirlwind in hand. We're guaranteed to get Justice for 6. Let's build up a board to make it count, right? And I think this is where he makes a misplay. Because don't get me wrong, Eschaton Imperative is a very nice card. Even with the recent changes to it, it still can help change the momentum in your deck. The problem is playing it at 5 or 6 energy when you're not going to be able to play a troop to capitalize on it is a problem. That's really problematic. You're not gaining anything. You might as well have just killed the turret and left the 2/2 on there for something later. If anything, it simply let him play that Deathwing's Companion on this turn, but I already have got 2 troops on the board. I'm actually able to put a second troop on the board and play that Retribution and get rid of that as if it didn't cost me anything. I'm going to have my guys sit back, and next turn we're going to fire off Justice. We're going to fire him off with 5 units on the board. That's a lot of damage. That's a lot of damage. I'll take it. That's what I've got some options here, but I'm gonna stick with the good old Justice, and because I had to attack with that second one, it's only gonna be 4 on there. So as long as 2 hit that Deathwing troop, and they do, we're sitting pretty. And I could have played the Angelic Presence this turn after I played Justice, but that puts me in a good advantage, and that's pretty much game. That is the pacing of it. That game there, that's against Corswain, who's a very strong warlord, but because you're playing so many troops quickly on curve, or you just are able to keep bodies on the board, you can make things happen. The thing with the Imperial Fist, especially this build, now this build could work with Dorn, or whoever we end up getting as the 4th warlord. Although I'm questioning, it might depend on who that 4th warlord's going to be. It could also work with Sigismund. Don't get me wrong. The deck that I've got with Sigismund is a different style, but you could certainly do this deck with Sigismund. What makes it work for Polux, though, are several things as it currently stands. Number one, his ability to create troops constantly. That is super important. Neither Dorn nor Sigismund can create troops, so that's a big thing. Number two, his access to the counterattack being much higher. Other than that, if you had Sigismund and you play with this deck, you might get very similar results. Although your end game, your early game might be harder contingent if you don't hit a 2-drop troop. Then you're kind of hosed, but Pollux is guaranteed to have that 2-drop troop. He doesn't have to play a troop every turn. He just has to be able to play a troop on turn 1 and have it sit there. And if they get rid of it, he plays another one. Sigismund doesn't have that ability. He's got to protect it, or he's got to be able to replace it from hand. So that's something. Dorn could do it decently with his Bastion too, but he's not creating a unit. He also starts with 1 less card. So I'm doing a different deck with Dorn, struggling to get it up there. It's okay. It's above 50% with what we've got for Dorn right now. Yeah, Pollux, that's pretty good so far. Sigismund, even better. That's a 72% right there. I mean, that's up from what it was. You can play the Fist multiple ways, but I really enjoy playing the Fist. This deck hinges on 2 key cards: Stalwart Defenders and stone gauntlets. Everything else in here is nice. The reason why I have chosen each of these troops is either because they enhance the stats of their fellow Imperial Fists, or they've got access to frontline, or they've got bastion. That's important. I don't need anything else. I need those things. I need those things. Castros is nice because he creates turrets. That's great. He's a distraction. He's also a front line. That's huge. Having front lines, having distractions to force my opponent to do things away from Alexis Pollux's face, put the damage elsewhere, that's what I need. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, as much as I've got wins on here, some of these losses are brutal. If Alexis Polux loses the momentum, or he doesn't get a decent hand or front line, and you hit a fast deck that just can pump out insane damage, it can be over before you get anything started, before like 6 energy. Got some brutal White Scars games. World Eater games are tough. I've gotten some wins with World Eaters, but if the pings go against you, or they get their sweep in advance out, that can really ruin your day. But if they leave those troops sit, if they leave 2 or 3 troops sit with Bastion 3 or 4, it takes 1 turn and you can turn it all around on them and surprise them. They can be up 10 health and all of a sudden they're down by 3 compared to your health. It's really fun to see that pull off, and it makes the game different. The entire pacing of the game when you're playing the Imperial Fist is different, and I want to talk about that more probably when I do the Imperial Fist card by card, which will be much later, waiting for the full set to release, and I still have got other card by cards to do. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. We've got the Warp Chatter podcast that just came out on Thursday talking about first impressions with the Imperial Fist. So if you haven't checked that out, we're talking with LCFR on that. Give it a listen. It's available on most listening platforms. The podcast is out every Thursday, and it's by players for players. Always looking to talk to people out there. If you would like to be on the podcast, hit me up. Let me know. But otherwise, guys, I hope this is a first peek as far as what the Imperial Fist can do outside of turret spam. Turret spam is a thing. Don't get me wrong. Fortification Mastery, Sustained Barge, Fortified Outpost. Hey, it's a thing. But everybody's talking about the Astartes Pollux or Astartes, fists. This is what they mean. This is what they mean. And it's really fun to play. It's kind of like a weird variation on Death Guard, kind of, and not quite Iron Warrior style, but just a different kind of style. It's like a turtle up and then a big punch. And if you let me turtle up and you don't break my wall, it's gonna be bad for you. But 30 health, just make no mistake, it's a frail state, and there's probably some ways to improve this deck. I'm not done with it by any means. I wouldn't put in too many of these high cost troops. I had Assault Echelon in here earlier because it's like, oh, this guy's going to pump up troops. He works really well in the events. But for this deck, the speed and the pacing, I never played him. In the early drafts I had, by the time I got to 7 energy, I was ready to play multiple troops and a Stone Gauntlet, or I was dead. So the only high cost cards are these 4, because they're so key and they're just one-offs, and that's why the pacing is so low. So that's where we're at. If there's other ways, like Tylus might not be bad. Maybe Dar's Way I considered, but then I really want to hone down the effect of supply lines. So maybe a shield charge wouldn't be a bad option to go with if you don't have those. If you don't have some of these cards here, Void Maneuver might not be bad as far as buying yourself some time. But give it a whirl. Take a look at it. Hope it's interesting. Hope it's inspired you to see that. Pollux. I don't know if this is the way he's going to be staying. He's got a hill to climb, no doubt about it. But I am happy to have made some progress in climbing that hill with him, and I wanted to share that with you. So until next time, guys, keep playing Legions, and we'll talk to you later.